Okay, so we just got done watching that video, and if you heard them right at the beginning, they talked about the inexhaustible supply of water that's below us. I think we all know better than that at this time, and that's partly why I'm here today to talk about the groundwater levels in the district. To start out, I'll give you kind of an overview of the state though real quick. This is the map that they just released at the news last night, or the paper, even the natural resource, School of Natural Resources. On Facebook, they just released this. Give you a good idea of what's going on in the state. Of course, we're right here in the mound area. Part of the reason that we know what's going on so well in our district, every black dot up there represents a well that we measure or that Central Public Power is measuring at least twice a year. So we get a spring reading, a fall reading, and we're able to track our changes in throughout the year. Of course, three river basins that we are part of kind of makes us a unique NRD in relation to the other ones. Breaking down the wells that just the Tri-Basin monitors, we've got irrigation wells are kind of a purple color up there for you. Then we also have some dedicated observation wells that we've been drilling for the last decade, basically. Those are the red and black dots up there. Black dot represents a single well that was drilled. A red dot represents what we call a cluster well. It's a nested well. There's two formations that we monitor there. We've got a couple other different types, but I'm not going to touch on those during this talk anyway. Part of my job is at the NRD is to create maps from the water information that we gather. I produce something like this that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to anybody except for a cartographer or map investigator. But from that, we pretty it up a little bit. And this is a map showing the elevation of the groundwater underneath of us. So starting, down in this area south of Nolan, as our lowest elevation in the district, and this is kind of true with the surface elevation as well. Lowest here, as you come northwest across the district, we find our high point over there. Of course, we're influenced by the mound that is kind of in this area. And so with that high amount of water in that area, we have a flow. Water, of course, is going to flow downhill. It's true underneath the ground. And so most of the water in the district is flowing, relatively in these directions, with the exception of when it comes to the surface. And so we see in Gosford County, we'll find headwaters where the groundwater is coming to the surface. You'll find a spring. If you've ever canoed or kayaked, like on the Niobrara River, you see a lot of those springs, and that's exactly what's happening there too. A little harder to find in this area, but they are out there. This is just another shot. Obviously, this little spring had not been there very long. It hadn't eroded too much, but just kind of give you an idea of what's going on there. Okay, now more into the groundwater. Before I get started, a lot of us saw storm damage this year, both in June and July. The mid-June storm kind of got going in here with the hail. It led up, but the wind kept going as it came across south of Minden. And then in July, of course, we had a system that came across this way. Kind of devastated the given area and kept coming south right through Hartwell and Norman. The importance of this slide, as you'll see as we go through, I have a couple observation wells out there, and you'll see a big difference as I show those. I'm going to start in Gosford County though, and I'm going to just show you a few different wells. GO5 is up here. It's kind of hard to see. I didn't do a real good job with this map this year, but it's up there in the Platte Basin. GO8 is over here south of Smithfield. We'll jump back across to G119, and this will be one of the monitored wells that we have a data logger in. It takes a reading every 12 hours, so we get a lot better information with those. G23 down in Union Township. And then G19 is over here in the boot or the toe of Gospel County. So G05, again, up in up near Eustis area. I guess before I get started with that, I should explain what you're looking at. This is what we call a hydrograph. It's got a legal location, the well number with the NRD assigned, surface elevations over here, if you're interested in that. But more importantly, the elevation of the water is found over here on the y-axis. On the x-axis, and it's the time. This one started measuring in 1977. You can see it's got some mound influences that came up over time. What you're looking at here is a peak. Is typically a spring reading when it's been recharging. Nobody's pumping over the winter time, of course, so you get a recharge, which we check, in the spring. And we see that drawdown in the valley of that in the fall after the irrigation season. So we see a gradual increase over time, and then around 2000, we saw that drought bring us back up through the last, about 10 years ago we started recovering, but then here in 2012, and this will be congruent throughout a lot of these slides I'll show you. 2012 we had some of our best numbers. It was actually a pretty good spring, but then the drought started at about May time, and we're checking in April, so we were actually just catching the last little bit of that recovery before we got going with this last drought. Okay, south of Smithfield now, kind of the same thing. Not nearly as much pumping this year, though, of course, because we had some more timely rains in areas. So we're seeing a little bit of drawdown, but one thing that we kind of look at, you can see from where we measure in the fall to the spring, kind of how that can be anticipated for next year. And so you can see if we're ending it in the fall at this elevation, we can expect to see, better come this spring here in a few months when we're out there reading them again. Okay, G119 or G119. This is one that's we drilled a monitoring well in. Of course, we don't have near the history on those, but this is one that we put in 08, and again, it's the exact same thing we're seeing. This is a really good example, actually. We get pretty consistent recharge at the same rate. It's the drought years when we see that pumping that is the most significant thing about it. And so just kind of an idea of where we're at with those. G23 is, of course, in Union Township, the only township that we have an allocation in right now. You can see it's slowly losing all the water levels out there. And that's partly because the mound influence isn't making its way into that township. Like I said, we've got some of those springs, the surface water, or the groundwater is interacting with the surface, and so it's harder for that water to influence that far south. Let's back up there real quick. Again, in 2012, we saw a really good number and good recovery. I was getting optimistic that it was actually going to see some good numbers, and then, of course, we all know what happened then. So G19 is over in the boot. It's basically exactly what I've been showing you. Through 2000, we kind of had that drawdown, the recovery, and then kind of where we're at there, we're actually doing pretty good out in that area. Okay, into Phelps County now. P117 and 118, they are north of town here, just before you drop down into the river valley. That's a dedicated observation well where we have two locations, or we have one location with two data loggers. P11 over here south of Loomis, it's just on the basically the boundary of the Republican and Platte. P13 then will be down here in Atlanta. 16 is right along the Harlan County line, straight south of where we are right now. And P17 is over near Kearney County. So what we're looking at here is we'll occasionally have one well, 2 data loggers. We have what's called a shallow screen and a deep screen. With a shallow screen, it's a Pleistocene aquifer. It's a younger aquifer than the Ogallala. Typically, you're not going to have quite as good production out of that, but it's still, a lot of the older wells were drilled into that shallow well, or a screen. So we're monitoring both of them in this case. You can see they're both in sandy formations, so they tend to mimic each other pretty closely. But up on the plat, you don't see near the drawdowns because of this high surface water, or the high water table in that area. Okay, over south of Loomis now. Of course, mound influence here. We didn't see nearly the drawdown during the last drought, and so I don't anticipate you're going to see a whole lot just with this drought. You can see again, here's 2012 when we had our highest numbers. Okay, now over by Atlanta, and this is one of the areas, of course, that have the storm damage. You can see exactly where we were at the spring, and we actually got a higher fall reading because of the devastation of the crops. There was no pumping in that area. And the same with P16, which is straight south of us here. Actually doing better than we were the past spring. P17 over by Kearney County, of course the hail kind of let up in that area, but the wind came up. But we also had a little more rain in that area too, so if you weren't damaged by storm, you still had a chance to get a crop out. So a little bit of pumping in that area, but still doing okay. Okay, into Kearney County, K127 and 128, they're right basically at the Fort Kearney area. K131 and 132, straight south of that. But now I'll jump down to the Republican and K27. And back over here between Minden and Hartwell is K13. And K112 is over southeast of Hartwell. And then K30 is down here in the far corner. Again, this is another K127, 128. This is another location with 2 data loggers in it. What we're looking at is the surface elevation is 2120. That's this line right across the top actually. That's the surface of the earth. You can see during rain events, it gets pretty darn close to actually doing some flooding, and in the ditches it is wet. But it has kind of a consistent elevation that it likes to stay in that area. Of course, during the summers, it comes down, but it returns pretty well then again in the spring. Now south of there, about 6, 7, 8 miles, more of a separation in the 2 aquifers. You can see they still basically have the same characteristics, so they both respond the same. K27, this is the one that's in the Republican area. A little more exaggerated in its growth. Of course, it's kind of on the edge of the mound, so at times it's getting good response, and at other times you're seeing more dramatic losses there. Okay, K13 is between Minden and Hartwell. It is basically out of the mound area, so what we see there is a lot more dramatic again. You can see the 2012 we were responding, we were doing pretty well, and then the last few years of pumping were pretty significant. And then here we are basically back where we were a year prior. K112 is right over by Hartwell, and as I showed you on that map, that was pretty much an area that was annihilated by the hail. And so right here is basically the pumping for the summer of 2014. We had 0. And so anticipate that if any of this returns over this winter, we should be sitting pretty well in that area too. In K30, this is a township that we're a little bit concerned about some of the declining water levels out there. You can see we have a little bit of kind of the same thing. It gets kind of significant when you get to pumping. This one actually looks like it's not too bad. So we'll see how we do this spring. Okay, so we're going to do a quick comparison of the spring of 2014 compared to the spring of 2013. For the river basins, the Platte had lost about a foot of groundwater. Republican was pretty close to the same. Little Blue, a little more. The district average was just about a foot and a quarter. Now backing up a little bit more to 2012, when the drought started, what do we look like from spring 2014 back to 2012? The Platte Basin was down almost 3.5 feet. The Republican, 3 feet, and Little Blue approaching close to 4 feet. District average is 3.25. This slide has no significance really besides the fact that I followed my wife in Montana for a few years, and the snowfall would gather atop the chain link fence, and I was just baffled the first time I saw it that it wasn't blowing off of the fences up there. I had never seen snow without wind, and so I had to take a picture of that. So with that, does anybody have any questions with regards to groundwater levels?
Questions for Nolan? Yes, Marcia.
Do you have any idea, do you track what your total volume is in each of the basins in Tri-Basin?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you keep track of what your total volume is in each of the three basins?
For irrigation purposes, the Republican is all metered, so we have a good idea of what's going on in that basin. The Platte is a little more scarce, and so is the Little Blue. So we have a little bit of an idea what's going on in that area, but not fully like we do in the Republican. And I think the Republican numbers we usually get those, sometime here, late winter, early spring, they'll be available to us.
No, Marcia, we hadn't tried that, and as Nolan said, we're fully metered in the Republican Basin portion of the district as a result of the last Kansas-Nebraska lawsuit settlement. For a variety of reasons, producers in the Platte and Little Blue have been required to put on meters for a number of years, and so about 20% of our acres in the Platte and Republican are now metered. The preliminary results I saw from this last year looks like about 6.5 inches per acre was pumped on average across the Republican Basin part of the district. And as Nolan says, we'll have more firm numbers here fairly shortly. We could come up with a total volume of water, certainly for the Republican, and a pretty good estimate for the other parts of the district as well, I think. Any other questions for Nolan? If not, our groundwater data, the graphs that he was showing you, a slideshow like this will be available on our website. If you have interest in a particular well, you'd like a hydrograph of that, we'd be glad to provide it to you. Just contact Nolan and we'll make that available for you. So, once again, thanks Nolan for your presentation.